folks, welcome back to Indaba Africa. This is Chris once again. Hello folks, and welcome once again. Welcome back to Chris Wyatt Africa here on the Indaba Africa channel, part of the Indaba Broadcasting Network. Well, we have a guest with us, and technically I think you are my first official guest of the year, because my other guest isn't a guest, but rather co-host on my program, Answer the Question with Rob Hutchinson. So here we go. I remember last year who my first guests were. They were a couple of Oaks that grew up in the Belgian Congo. That was Erica and Nigel Soden. And we talked about that in January, I think January 4th, they were the first guests. But you're my first official guest this year, Colonel Wynand du Toit from South Africa. Goeiedag, hoe gaan dit, meneer?
Chris, no, good evening. It's going well. And we got good weather. We had a lot of rain here in South Africa. Floods, everything. Dams are full. So we are very blessed, and we are grateful for that.
Well, there's, in fact, been a lot of rain in the Eastern Cape in particular, some massive flooding taking place, a few deaths attributed to it. You're in the Northern Cape these days. Did you get sufficient rain or too much rain?
I've lost Chris. The signal is not that well. I don't know why. But I presume you asked about Northern Cape, rainfall here.
When I asked, I said that in the Eastern Cape there was lots of rain, and it was heavy, and there's been flooding and some deaths attributed to it. You're in the Northern Cape these days. You've relocated. What did you get adequate rainfall, or did you get too much, or was it just enough there in the Northern Cape?
No, listen, we had a very good raining season last year, and it started raining again around about November. So we had periodical rainfall here in the Northern Cape. And the Kalahari is extremely beautiful. It's green. And places like Husky and Pan, where they do the land speed records, and those things are all submerged in water, which is something that I haven't seen in many, many years. And the rivers are full, of course. The Orange River that is flowing past Uppington are extremely full, and Grabbies, waterfalls over the banks. And yeah, great views, great for tourism, but not so good for the wine farmers next to the river, because a lot of their vineyards have been flooded. And that's the downside of a lot of rain, because most of the water is coming from the Lesotho side, and up in the northwest Gauteng side, and all the water flows down this way. But it's still a beautiful sight. Very nice to see. That's
a good point. In fact, you know, if you're in a vineyard and you get too much rain, it can lead to mold and mildew on the grapes, which can be quite bad. That's the situation. So I understand that concern. You know, you mentioned the Kalahari. Having lived in the Kalahari, when the rains do come, it just transforms things. It's a completely different world, literally overnight. It's you go from this brown, dusty, you know, kind of khaki-colored landscape to just beautiful, absolutely beautiful, especially in the Kalahari with lots of flowers you rarely see just come and bloom. It's absolutely gorgeous, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, yeah. You know, I knew a guy, as we call them, Uncle Oom, you know. Mm-hmm. I know a Oom there in Namibia, and one year we had rainfall in the middle of the winter, in July. The next moment, the field was blue with flowers. And he told me a very true thing. He said, it doesn't matter what month it is raining. There will always be something that is growing, benefiting, and flowering.
That's a fair point.
And that's true.
No, that is true, but you and I both know that if it's in a place, in a desert or dry place like the Kalahari, a semi-arid or high desert chaparral, where you get such low rainfall, when you do get that massive stuff, there are a lot of plants that have been waiting and waiting and waiting. Boom! They just explode in color. It's stunning.
Yeah, and the grass, of course. You know, if you get in the Kalahari, you get pre-December rain, pre-end of the year rain. Then it's your multi, or your permanent grass is then growing.
Yeah.
and in the after year, it's the grass that only grows for 1 year.
Right, the seasonal.
Growing,
you get the seasonal versus the permanent. Yeah. You know, you mentioned that my first combat tour was the Gulf War. In the early 1990s, the Persian Gulf War. And of course, I was in the Saudi desert and I arrived there and everything was just like the same color. It was all tan and it was flat like the surface of Mars where we set up our forward assembly area. And if you needed landmarks to navigate, you were in trouble. If you can navigate by the stars, you're okay because everything was completely tabletop flat and it was all the same color and visibility in January because the lunar cycles got down to about 1%. So you can imagine how hard it was to see in a place like that. Anyway, but the rain started coming in January, about the second week of January. And overnight, we went from just dust and surface of Mars to a verdant green landscape with grasses popping up everywhere. And it was when we went into combat. I mean, it's not like it was a golf course green, but there was lots of grass everywhere. And the transformation was remarkable. And it was the first time I'd spent any time in a desert as the rains came. I'd been to deserts before, but when they were dry. So quite a remarkable experience. It was very different.
No, that's true. That's true. It's a grateful landscape.
Indeed.
Grateful for every drop of water.
That's a good point. That's it's grateful to nature for providing that water. I hadn't thought of it that way. There's a lot of folks in the chat. I'll do my best to get to some of the chat folks, but we're going to talk about some of the issues going on in South Africa today. And his connection isn't ideal, so I'm going to take advantage of when he can hear me to make sure that we can talk. But one of my viewers, Dion Grebe, said somewhere sitting in Afrikaans. I just saw here in a moment ago. Where is it at? He said, welcome, Wynand. Blij jou hier te zien. Chris is een goeie persoon. So I guess they said, please stick with us. Chris is a good person. I think that's what that says in Afrikaans.
Yeah, you're a good person.
That's what I thought. Well, yeah, as are you. Hey, let's talk about that. When you went to let's fade back a few days to Cabinda. When you went to Cabinda's a little different than say Namibia, is it? The climate, the environment is a little bit different than the dry sands of the Kalahari and of the Namib.
Yeah, it's Cabinda is like a tropical jungle. You find the jungles, you find the savanna in between the patches of jungle, and of course the humidity are very, very high. Rainfall are very high, and it's a completely different world. You know, if you take the Kalahari or you even take the Karoo, and there's 25 millimeters of rain falling. Then you got floods everywhere. But in the area of Cabinda, they're closer up to the equator. If it starts raining and 120 millimeters of rain falls in 2 hours' time, it's almost like it disappears into the ground. It's muddy for a while, but the water went straight through into the earth, which is a completely different experience.
Absolutely. You know, it's interesting you mention that because my first experience with that sort of environment was in Liberia, where I went to rebuild the army after the Civil War. Yeah. And it's the same thing. You know, Liberia, before I went there, I was told by people, and, you know, people always say things, and, you know, people say things. It doesn't necessarily mean it's true. And I was told by several people that Liberia is the wettest national capital in the world. I'm like, yeah, okay, sure. And I'm thinking maybe it's Caracas in Venezuela, you know, because I think of that as being a place with lots of rainfall. So I looked it up, and it turns out that, in fact, Liberia, at least at that time, it's just going on 15 years ago now, was the national capital with the highest annual average rainfall of any national capital on the planet, just because of the way that the West Africa is bent around the Atlantic there, and just at the right angle, because you've got Conakry in Guinea, you've got Freetown, Sierra Leone, you've got Abidjan, and all these are relatively close, you know, latitude-wise to where Monrovia is, but it's just in that sweet spot to catch all those storms. So I got there and it wasn't raining much, you know, and then, the rain came. It rains 7 months of the year. It rains for 16 hours a day, and it doesn't rain. It's like standing under a shower head. It just pours. And like you said, when the rain lets up, you're like, where's the water? It's all gone. It's like it just disappeared like magic. It just goes like that. And then within minutes, it goes from being pleasant to being steamy once again.
Yeah. Now, while I was spending time in Brazzaville, Congo, the Republic of the Congo, I was farming there for 6 years.
Yeah.
And there also, when the rain comes down, it's a lot of rain. and it's extremely hot and humid, but less hot than Uppington. I must tell you that. Uppington is much warmer than there, but this is a dry warmth, not the humidity, and it's the humidity that is buggering you up. You walk 20 meters and the sweaters running down your face. And yeah, but it's a good part of the world, but you know, we experience a lot of problems because of all the rain, in the sense that all the nutrition in the ground is just washed away. So to plant maize, for example, works for the first season, and thereafter you must actually farm it in. You must break the land. 7 tons of calc. What is? I don't know without in English what is calc.
Not calcium.
Calcite or something.
Yeah,
like that.
I can't think of it in English right now either.
And so you need to break in the land.
Is the limestone?
And it takes time.
Is limestone? Is that what you're thinking of? Limestone.
Yes, you are quite right.
See, that's quite bad. I can think of it Afrikaans too, but not in English.
No, but that was a great time, spending time up there. And you know, that was interesting. Was very close to where I was captured many years ago. I actually, when we went up with the convoy, we drove past the place where I was captured, less than 100 meters away.
Wow. I didn't realize it was that close for you. That's interesting. You know, we come back to that story a little bit, but I did want to ask you about or talk about this. You mentioned something that really wasn't a topic for today, but I think it's something that's worth mentioning. You know, one of the challenges for African countries and for the continent of Africa is so much of it lies in the tropical region, and so much of it lies in places where it has poor soils and it has other challenges. You know, like a lot of the rivers in Africa aren't navigable. You can't put a boat in them and go up because you have all these cataracts, these rocky formations, waterfalls, like the Congo River. It's a huge river. It's massive, tons of water, great hydroelectric potential, but you can't put steamships on it or boats on it because you have to disassemble them, get off from point to point, and reassemble, that sort of thing. But as far as farming, Africa faced some challenge. You know, one of the reasons why Africa was so suitable in southern Africa, once you got below the Zambezi, but particularly below the Limpopo, is that there were natural barriers. And the natural barriers being poor soils, the humidity. In addition to that, one reason why European settlers had a hard time getting past the Zambezi and succeeding is because of the tsetse fly, and also malaria. You get the malaria zones, which, and a lot of people don't realize this, but Ghana today would have a heavily white European population were it not for the fact that tropical diseases wiped out almost every Brit that went there. They died in droves. They just kept dying. So those natural barriers to agriculture, to settlement, are real challenges that make it difficult for people to succeed in that part of Africa. When you were a farmer there in the Congo Brazzaville, or were you in Congo DR? You were in Congo Brazzaville, yes?
Brazzaville.
Yeah. So when you were in Congo Brazzaville, when you were doing farming there, like you said, you couldn't just keep growing the same crops. You had to rotate. You had to build the soil constantly. That really is a huge drain on your time and resources and money, isn't it? I mean, just to stay competitive and just to stay producing things. Yes.
Yeah, you know, at that stage, it cost us around about 15,000 rand to plant 1 hectare of maize.
Wow.
But something I found out which worked out much cheaper was rice. If you plant it like wheat, you know, not in patches of water like you see in Vietnam and those places, because the water is actually a weed control, because we don't grow directly in water. But you can plant it, sow it like you plant the wheat, you know, in the United States. If the rainfall is good enough, the rice are doing perfectly well. The problem is, once you harvest the rice, you will have to work it yourself until it's a sellable product. In other words, you have to clean the little dopey away and package it into a sellable state. And that put a hell of a burden on one, because normally when you go farming, somebody else is doing the once you deliver your produce to the corporation or the silo, and they will then process it. That's the right word. They will process
it. Yep,
the sellable product.
Yep.
But in the Congo, you will have to do it yourself. But one thing of that part of the world is that there's always something you can pick off a tree and eat. So even if you are walking next to the road, you will find something to eat. I think that's why a lot of the locals there don't actually plant anything. They just survive by eating fruits from trees because it's there. If they are hungry, they can survive. But the further south you are coming, the less that is available. So here in South Africa, if you go and pick a fruit from a tree, you'll probably get shot because it belongs to someone. But if you look at the mango trees in the Congo, for example, they get huge trees standing next to the road, in the streets, in the town, and you can just reach up and pluck one from the tree. It is completely different area, different ways of work the land, the ways of. But I must say, when the French were still there was huge palm oil, farms. It's there. There was huge cattle farms. When we arrived in the Congo, there was not a single head of cattle.
Wow.
While in the time of the French, and immediately thereafter, there was hundreds and thousands of head of cattle. But they just stopped producing because they don't need to. And that's where everything fell on the ground. So now they're only surviving, planting a couple of things, especially, what does you call it, cassava?
Cassava, yep.
That's the main thing. That they are feed on, so that everybody is planting that. But other than that, all the farms disappear, the buildings are standing there, the factories that work the oil are standing there, nothing is happening. It's just slowly returning back to nature.
Yeah.
But then they tend to forget the impact that agriculture can have on the economy of the land. If you have a good agricultural sector that can export, then it got a huge positive influence on the economy.
No, you make a good point. You make a good point there. You make a really good point. In fact, one of the issues with Zimbabwe that people look at is how can Zimbabwe have fallen so far? Because if you look objectively at the figures and you don't know much about the situation, you go, well, the agriculture sector was only about 14% of the gross domestic product. But what a lot of people don't realize is that sector employed 600,000 to 800,000 Zimbabweans in a country at the time of 12 million, 14 million. So that's a huge number of Zimbabweans that were employed on the farms and kept them economically engaged. And beyond that, Zimbabwe had a fair amount of light industry. So if you needed parts for your tractor, many of them were produced right there in Zimbabwe. And that was part of the wider economy. But from export earnings at that time, the majority of Zimbabwe's export earnings came from agriculture. 60 to 70% of all export earnings in hard currency came in from agriculture. And when they attacked the agricultural sector, it was the death knell on what was already a dying economy, because the ZANU-PF had stolen so much from the rest of the economy that there was nothing left to steal. So that they started playing this game about, kith and kin and settler columns stealing the land. And of course, there is a bit of truth to that. But the reality is that from 1980 onwards, 42% of all land designated by the government itself as commercial farmland under Mugabe's government as prime minister and then as president after 1988, 42% of the farmland had changed hands at least one time, which meant the government, under the Lancaster House Agreement, had first right of refusal on every hectare of land in Zimbabwe. No one could buy land unless Mugabe's government said, you have our approval. So 42% of the commercial farmland had been offered for sale at least one time, and many of those parcels, Wyatt, had been offered 2, 3, 4, 5, farmland, you know how it is, it changes hands frequently for different reasons. And so the bottom line is that all the lies about it were simply lies in 2000. It wasn't the story they made, but the media fell for it, and people just love to have racial strife, so they just went for the story hook, line, and sinker, and Zimbabwe was destroyed from a sector that was only about 15% of the economy. When you look at just a sector directly, when you look at the the ripple effect of where it affected the banking sector, all the loans that were out there, the fertilizer that was produced in the country, the tractor parts, the tires, all of that in the wider economy, the whole thing just collapsed.
Yeah, true. And you have to look at Zambia now. I mean, when the white Zimbabwean farmers was sort of chased off the land, a huge number of them went to Zambia.
Yeah.
And Zambia, within 10 years, changed from a net importer of food to a net exporter of food. And suddenly the breadbasket of Africa is Zambia and not Zimbabwe anymore. And it used to be Zimbabwe. The problem that we are facing in South Africa is a very similar threat. And it doesn't matter to show the people, to show the ANC the facts on what happened in Zimbabwe or the rest of Africa. They will still continue with the plans because the vote is more important than the production of food. This tendency that the world will give food when there's a shortage is a disease in Africa.
Yep.
And they just think, well, it will come from somewhere, but we need the land, and let's redistribute the land to the people. Then they will vote for us. And with, especially now with the very low voting rate and guys that have voted during the municipal elections, and the fact that the ANC support has dropped to beneath 50%,
yep.
Now all of a sudden makes the grabbing of the land much more important, because that's the only way how they can regain confidence from the population who got nothing. Yeah.
No, that's exactly what they think. Yeah, no, you're right. The low voter turnout, which is astounding to me. It's so disappointing. I spent a year and a half exhorting and urging South Africans to go vote. Obviously, my previous channel being wiped out had an impact on not being able to influence as many people as I used to influence, but people just didn't go out and vote. We're talking about an abysmal turnout. You know, the DA, I want to get back to Zambia in a second, but the Democratic Alliance in South Africa keeps growing. I had an article published today, by the way, about the Grand Coalition, these 6 parties, on Morning Shot for viewers. If you're going to go to Morning Shot and find that, it was published this morning. I wrote it in December about this Grand Coalition and how coalitions aren't going to work as well as people think they are in South Africa. But the ANC, the DA keeps on, well, at least the ANC is below 50%. But that's not even remotely true, Wyatt. The reality is this: 39 million eligible South Africans to vote. There are only 12 million people who showed up, 11.9 million. That's 13% of eligible South Africans. That's horrific. That's just terrible. I mean, the ANC got 13%. I mean, it was 20% of eligible, or 31% of eligible voters, but the ANC got 13% of the eligible vote. 13%. That's not a mandate. That's not even a positive vote.
The problem in South Africa is if the voter wants to punish the government, then they don't vote. Mm. So they don't vote for the opposition as well.
Exactly.
Which means the opposition don't win. They just stay away. They just don't vote. And to change that perception is difficult.
Yeah.
But the guy wants to remain an ANC member. He is an ANC member, but he don't vote because he's angry. But he don't vote for another party to change. That's a problem. In South Africa, the coalitions of which you are talking at this moment, I don't have a lot of faith in this coexistence of the different parties. Mm-hmm. It's just a question of one, they don't agree. And so it's going to be very safe play politics. It's going to happen at municipal level. And if certain people's ambitions are not satisfied, they just walk out of the coalition. We have already seen that is now happening, I think, in Johannesburg.
Yep.
Where the DA had or not the majority, but with the coalition in control. Now one of the parties has walked away, and all of a sudden they now consider going with the ANC, putting the ANC back into power. So it's not about good governance.
No.
Here it is about themselves. And as long as the people of South Africa don't understand the difference between good governance and enriching themselves, we are going nowhere.
Absolutely. I think that's exactly what the problem is. And you spot on 100%, hit the nail on the head. Rather than punish the ruling party for its malgovernance, its malfeasance, people just don't vote. And that's the bottom line. The ANC lost 32% of the votes that it got in 2016. Now, people want to look at 2019, but that's a national election. People vote differently, completely different. Numbers are very different. Municipal election numbers are always lower, and it tends to be people who are actually interested or engaged in what's happening. And so in 2016, the ANC got 32% more votes. It went from 8 million to 5.4 million. That's disaster. But guess what? The Democratic Alliance lost 37%, even more of their voters. They dropped from 4 million to 2.5 million. If they had just held their own, if the DA had kept the 4 million votes they had in 2016, they would be on level, on par with the ANC, and would be a very different situation across the country. People are crowing about bringing the ANC below 50%, but they still control 122 municipalities. Down from 168, but 122 without any coalition partners, just all on their own. That's a frightening prospect for people who are looking for rubbish removal, for electricity, for potholes to be fixed, for law enforcement, for government services, vehicle registrations. It's just gun registrations. It's just insane. And I don't get the cognitive dissonance of South Africans, and for that matter, Americans either, who don't bother to vote and then complain about things and bellyache about why things are the way they are. You are part of the problem if you didn't go vote. That's just the bottom line.
But the DA made a huge mistake around about 2016 and thereafter, before this voting, and they sort of took a very hard stance onto conservative views and stuff that goes with it, and they've lost that vote. All the conservatives will now rather vote for the Freedom Front than voting for the DA, because the DA has shown a side that we don't like.
Yep.
So the guys say, well, the DA is in fact not going to make a difference. They are not standing up for our purpose or for what we want. They make the right noises, but when they have to execute, it comes down to the same thing. But I'm the first one to acknowledge that where the DA is in power currently in South Africa, the municipalities is functioning extremely well.
Yeah.
And that's the only part of the country that is properly managed. So I give that credit to them, that they are doing that. They are trying very hard to get the conservative vote back, but I think it's too late.
Yeah, I think that the Mmusi Maimane era really cost them the conservative vote because the party wanted to be the ANC light.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. Well, let me do a bit of housekeeping real quick, okay, Vine, if you don't mind. Folks, you're listening to Chris Wyatt Africa on the Indaba Africa channel, part of the Indaba Broadcasting Network. It is Monday. Wow. Monday, the first real Monday of the new year. I know it's the second Monday of the year, but the last one doesn't count. It was still a holiday weekend. It's the first real Monday when people are getting down to work around the world. And my special guest today is someone who's been on the program a few times. Fantastic gentleman. You're talking to the colonels today. Both of us are former colonels in our respective military forces. Wynand du Toit, very famous published author, an outspoken security person and authority, and also a farmer like myself, although a much more recent farmer than I abandoned that vocation a long time ago. It seems to be runs much deeper in his veins than it does in mine. But let me just do a couple more things very quickly. If you've not been to the channel before and you're not a subscriber, hey, take a second if you don't mind. We try to overcome shadow banning and harassment by the PooTube. Just push that button right down there, or is it this side? It's this side. Push the button right down there, and all you have to do is push it and you become a subscriber. It's absolutely free. We're not begging for you to be a paying member and support the channel. You can do that if you want. We're just asking for you to be a supporter so we grow the audience and more people know about it. And when you push that button, listen.
That was easy.
It's so simple. All you do is push the button. And by the way, I wanted to share with a couple comments from here. There was one I want to get here from someone that I don't recognize that I'd seen before. Oh, yeah, well, actually, I think I've seen him a long time ago. Chris van der Westhuizen says, "Salute, Colonels. Thanks for this message. Salute from South Africa, Potchefstroom." Well, thank you for calling in from there. And a lot of my audience is here, but I see a lot of folks that are loyal to your program are also here. So welcome to them, some returning and some who are new. I want to share this with you from a farming perspective. This is from Germany, from the Alps. It's a actual cowbell with embroidered Edelweiss and Alpine flowers on it, and I kind of use it now when people super chat. We kind of do that now. They get to hear the cowbell. I thought you might appreciate that. I don't think you'll hear many of those in the in the Congo Brazzaville. As you said, the cattle are all gone. But let me get back to Zambia real quick. Oh, go ahead.
You used to find that very often in the northern parts of Namibia and in Angola. And as the cattle trots along, you can hear the bell. But of course, it's a nice warning sign when people, we could use them to move out of the way of this approaching group of cattle, because normally there is a couple of boys with them.
Yeah.
And their eyes are very sharp. So, yeah. But anyway, we use that warning bell as well.
Absolutely. It's interesting because some people think they're clever if they have a cat at home. If the cat is stealthy, which a lot of cats are, and they jump on them, because some cats do that, domestic cats will jump on people and they get irritated. So some people think they're clever. They put a bell on the cat. The problem with that is that the damn thing rings all the time. You can't have a cat in your house with a bell on it. You'll go nuts. It's constantly moving and grooming itself, and all you hear is the bell all the time. Whereas with the cows out there in the field, you just hear the bell when they move on and grab some more grass. But I did want to go back to Zambia real quick. You talked about the farmers, and in the immediate aftermath of 2000 and 2001, somewhere between 300 and 500 commercial farmers moved to neighboring Zambia, which of course was Northern Rhodesia years back when it was the Federation of Rhodesia and Nyasaland. That was Northern Rhodesia, known for a long time, and modern Zimbabwe was Southern Rhodesia. And it's always had a white population, just not as nearly as large as what Zimbabwe's had been, and just a mere shadow of what South Africa's white population is. But that population has been there for a long time. But many of the people who stayed in Northern Rhodesia were involved in business and government, not so much in agriculture. But when these commercial farmers came there in 2000, 2001, in less than 2 years, the agriculture production had risen so starkly that they had a problem. The kwacha became more valuable, and the currency increased in value, and you got less dollars in foreign currency because it was worth more. And so the value of the kwacha increasing actually kind of put them in a very difficult situation, because it may have lowered what they had to pay abroad for debt, because now they have more kwacha for their dollars they're paying back. But it also made it challenging because people wouldn't want to buy their exports as much because now they were pricier. So the irony of success in the initial aftermath of Zimbabweans arriving there was that it actually put them in a weird situation. But ultimately, in the end, the country was much better for the arrival of these commercial farmers. And as you mentioned, they've turned it from a country that was food deficient to a country that's once again a food exporter, which is something Zambia had not seen its entire independent period since the early 1960s.
It's true. It's true. The guys are doing very well in Zambia. But then, we are a funny nation. Give us land and we will make it work. Give us an area which we work and we control and it will work. But in every aspect, it will work. But somehow, that's not appreciated. They'd rather see us not succeed than seeing us succeeding.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Hey, here's a little trivia question for you. Now, I'm not going to try to put you on the spot and play stump the chump, as we say in American English, but here's one for you. A lot of people will look at Africa and say, if you ask who was the last white president or head of state in Africa, and they'll look and go, excluding Arabs, who many people consider to be white folks, but we're talking about of European descent. Who was the last white head of state in Africa? And people go, oh, that's easy. It was F.W. de Klerk, who recently passed away. But it wasn't F.W. de Klerk. And not to put you on the spot, this is a question more from my audience, but if you know the answer, which you probably do, you're welcome to answer it. But who was the most recent last white head of state in an African country? Anybody know that in the chat? Give them a chance to answer there. Anybody know? And we've kind of given you a hint. We're talking about Zambia. That ought to help. It was Guy Scott. Guy Scott was the acting president. He was a vice president. And when the president died in office for 90 days, he was president of Zambia just a few years ago. So Guy Scott back in October of 2014 to January 2015.
Yeah, right.
Yep. So he was white president.
I read that story and I was quite amazed when I read about it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, he's the most recent white president. He was president of the country because he was picked to be vice president, and they got elected, and then the president died in office, and then of course the Constitution is if the president dies in office, then you have to have an election in 90 days. So he was elevated, and he became president for 90 days, and then he stepped aside. He's 77 years old now.
But he did it. He probably did it well.
Yeah, no, he did it fine.
But I think
his politics are not a politics I agree with. He's kind of to the political left, but anyway.
But I think few people know that.
Yeah. Well, probably what people see is that he's white. That's what they know. They don't know that he's a leftist.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's.
But just remember.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Because you must remember one thing here. People who were left neutral 10 years ago are now far right.
Well, they're not. That's how they're described today. That's how they're described today.
I mean, look at the United States. How do you define it nowadays?
Oh, it's crazy. It's crazy. Yep.
Exactly.
Yep.
And the whole world is like that at the moment. And the only rational person, okay, I'm not going to say it.
Okay, I'm not sure where you're going, but if you're talking about Trump, I don't know if that's where you're going.
No, I'm not talking about him because he's not in office at the moment. I'm talking about the other real leader in the world, unfortunately.
I didn't know we had any left. I'm looking around. It's Jacinda Ardern, Scott Morrison, Cyril Ramaphosa, Boris Johnson, Emmanuel Macron, Justin Trudeau, the Manchurian Cadaver. I mean, Joe Biden. But
you are pulling me out at the moment. You know very well that he's the only decent leader left, and that's Putin.
Oh, actually, I didn't realize that's where you were going. Yeah, okay, gotcha. I'm not a fan of Putin, so he doesn't come immediately in mind, but he is effective. I'll give him that. He definitely knows how to run his country. That's for darn sure. But he's definitely poking at the bear now. I don't know that we're even a bear anymore in America. You know, we're kind of a sleeping raccoon or something, but we're not scaring anybody. Joe Biden and the North Koreans have already started launching intercontinental ballistic missiles over the Sea of Japan once again, which Trump had got them to stop doing. They're just pushing all the buttons. Myanmar, the military junta there is murdering people left and right and demonstrators every day. Kazakhstan's president just ordered shoot to kill, killed 164 protesters, just murdered them in the streets, and no comments from the Manchurian Cadaver. Ethiopia has been butchering and murdering people in Tigray for over a year, and this administration is quiet. Yeah, the world's just gone back up in flames ever since Donald Trump left office. Not that it was a peaceful world, but we didn't have all these conflicts. You know, it's funny how Barack Obama comes in office, and the complaint is about Iraq and Afghanistan. But then Barack Obama comes and gets a peace prize from the Nobel Organization for peace, and he starts more wars than George Bush, and the entire Middle East degenerates into, just a fratricide of bloody murders. Syria collapses, Iraq collapses, Egypt nearly collapses, Tunisia goes into a bloody civil war. It's just unbelievable. Thousands, hundreds of thousands of people die on the leftist watch, and they're supposed to be the people that care about world peace. And all these conflicts break around the world. Trump comes back, and we've got Morocco establishing diplomatic relations with Israel. We've got the Emirates establishing relations, Comoros established. The list goes on and on. Now, they haven't yet, but they were doing it. Sudan established diplomatic relations with Israel. And peace is sprouting all over the world with Donald Trump in office. And the U.S. isn't overextending itself. And then just 10 months, not even a year, and we've already seen the disaster in Afghanistan. Countries around the world are acting up. Tyrants are doing what they want. It's crazy. But you're right about Putin. He seems to have control of things in Russia.
Yeah. No, true. And he sticks to his guns, and he, you don't know the inner workings of how they are working, but at least he's very prominent, he's visible, and he's decisive in what he's doing and what he's saying. whether his decisions is good or bad, but at least he make it and he stick with it. And that's not what we can say of the Western world at the current moment. And no, definitely not of Africa.
Now, in fact, we have a situation in Australia where the world #1 tennis player, Djokovic, who's won the Australian Open 9 times, defending champion, he gets an exemption for the Rona from the Tennis Association and from the state of Victoria where the tournament is held. And then he heads off there, gets to immigration, and they claim that he failed to apply for the correct visa. So they throw him into a detention camp where people that are positive for the disease is, and he doesn't have it. Now, they go on. In Australia, you can get a temporary exemption for 6 months if you've had the disease. And so it went to a judge today, and this is what happened. The judge, after they've kept him basically in prison for a week now, the judge says, he asked the government, he said, he met every requirement that you issued for this visa. What more could he have done? And the government had no response. And they basically, in their written article to the court, they said, well, he have tested positive for the Rona in December, but there's no evidence that he suffered a serious case of illness. What the heck is that, a serious case of illness? Who determines what's serious? It's not like 5 of this and 10 of that, or 30 degrees versus 20 degrees, saying serious versus not serious. So on the basis of that, which is just totally fraudulent, that's why they denied it. By the way, they woke him up at 5:08 in the morning and told him, you have 3 hours to give us your changed application for the visa and justification of why you're here. Then less than an hour later, they came back and asked him at 6:14 in the morning, 5:08, well, a little bit of an hour. 5:08, they told him, give us your response in 3 hours or you're out of the country on a plane. 6:14, they came back to his room and said, where's your response? They didn't give him the 3 hours. And then less than an hour after that, within the 3-hour window in which he was supposed to respond, they already reached a decision to deport him, and they sent him to a detention camp. This is just total lunacy. And by the way, I don't have confirmation of this, but sources in Australia, I have several sources, has sent news to me, which isn't broken internationally yet. But the judge today set aside that and said he can play. He went to the tennis court, was practicing. I don't have confirmation, but I have it from several independent sources that he's been rearrested by Australian authorities and that the parliament and the minister intend to override the judicial system and set aside the judge's decision to get him out. This has nothing to do with him having the bug and not having it, because Australians who've had it the last 6 months are exempt from these travel requirements. They allowed him to come there so they can make an example of him to say, look, nobody's above our rules. We'll make you do what we want to do. And that's what this is all about. The world has lost its mind. That's not just in Australia. It's just the most obvious one. And they don't care the damage they do to their world-class sporting game.
Yeah. But, that's where Africa is different. Just 2 days ago, a person speaks to one of these informal traders and stuff, and he don't have a mask on. And the guy replied, said, well, we don't get COVID because we don't watch television.
Yeah.
And think about it. Think about it.
Oh, yeah, I do think about it. No, it's look. The point spot. It's funny. I've told people recently. I said, this thing's going to end this year because it just can't continue. People are either going to start rebelling or it's going to collapse on its own. I mean, look at the reaction to the Omicron variant. How the UK shut down travel with no scientific data. Follow the science. Listen to the science, and then without any one bit of data, simply because they were told that it had more mutations, as if more mutations automatically confers more lethality or more danger, when in fact, oftentimes with a virus, it becomes less lethal, and that way it survives longer and it doesn't kill its host off, and that's exactly what we see with Omicron. Now, they don't know what science is. It's just ridiculous. Somebody here said rules are rules, and they apply to everyone. No, they don't, Gary, because if they applied to everyone, then Djokovic's visa would have been granted, because the rule is if you've had corona within the last 6 months, you have medical proof of it, a positive test result, and you're not sick at the time, you have a negative test now, then for 6 months, you are okay in Australia. That's the rule. I know that. I've had Australian guests on the program. They've related what the government does there. But they denied him that rule. So the rules aren't rules and apply to everyone. They don't. They're selective rules. It's rules for thee, not for we. That's how it works. And that's what's happening around the world. Look at all the people in the ANC went out partying and going to dinners last year. We saw Nancy Pelosi going to get her hair done, shutting down, imprisoning people in San Francisco while she's walking around without a mask on. They're all hypocrites. They're all political elites. They don't care about the average Joe or Jane. They don't care about Pete or some more. They don't care. They care about their privilege, their egos, their wealth, and their access. And the rest of us can be damned. It's funny when we see these people who scream about climate change flying around in Learjets with 2 people on the plane like Al Gore flying to summits. And I went last year it's 2 years, a year and a half ago, to Aspen, Colorado. Beautiful location for a conference on alternative energy out there. And I was talking about the challenges of electricity in Africa. And I went by the airport on my way out after a number of people had left because it was the next morning. And there were over 140 private jets there. Lear and all these other things from all these rich multimillionaires and billionaires who flew there pushing alternative energy, solar photovoltaic panels, solar thermal, all this nonsense that can work, but it's not effective and efficient the way. So they're pushing it because they have something to gain from it. And they see nothing wrong with the hypocrisy of flying to Aspen, Colorado in a private jet. And the rest of us got there by bus or train. They're just all hypocrites. It's absolute nonsense.
Oh, I agree with you on that one. You still need base power. Base power is not necessarily green energy. Green energy is very difficult to be base power because you can't store it.
Yep.
And in South Africa, they have accepted now all this huge donations of money to turn South Africa into green energy. But the fact is, South Africa cannot survive without coal. It's impossible. We need coal. Or we need a lot of nuclear power stations. And that's the only thing that can provide base power, which we need, because otherwise it's not going to work.
No, absolutely. No, it's and not only do you need it, you have it. You have massive coal deposits. You have the world's largest coal exporting terminal, although that's really benefiting China. Why not use it? Botswana now just got $1 million from the African Development Bank to develop alternative energy production. Why? Coal bed methane, a clean natural gas, is just tons of it sitting in Botswana. They could power that country for a century with that and export power throughout the region and become a power generation powerhouse, a colossus. But now they're looking at spending $1 million looking at solar thermal. It's look, I mean, you can pursue that. But as you said, you got to have base power. You got to have what's reliable that'll be there 24/7 that you can rely on when the clouds come and the molten salt isn't warm enough to turn and create steam. It's crazy stuff. It's crazy stuff.
No, that is. And, that's why South Africa got huge electricity problems, much worse than people are thinking, because Eskom was one of the first targets of the state capture effort.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. I was just distracted for a second while you said that. No, you're absolutely right. It was I don't know if it was the first, but it certainly was, along with South African Airways, right up there straight away. And it's made its way all across now. Transnet, Airports Company South Africa, it's everywhere. It's incestuous. And it just gets worse. South Africa's rails are a disgrace. If you see photographs of the rail lines, particularly in Gauteng, like 70 or 90% of rail lines are not running now. You can't even run a train. It's crazy. Just, in the 60s, South Africa had an incredible train system. In the 80s, it still had a very functioning rail system. And now it's like looking at Tanzania a century after the Germans built railroads. It was a disaster.
Yeah, it is. It is, absolutely. In the Congo, I've seen what happened. You see all this huge workshops standing. Their roofs have been stolen off. The trains are still standing there, never being repaired. The trees are growing through them. No maintenance, nothing is happening. And very much the same you start seeing in South Africa. I said to a guy the other day that this town now is officially in a worse condition than the average Congolese town. And that's the truth. The people or the institutions are degrading so fast in South Africa that it's just a repeat of every African country. And of course, it's also about expertise. Now it's interesting when I read through the newspaper the other day on the Zondo Commission. It was very clear that one person said, well, we experienced a loss of expertise because the people was replaced by pro-Zuma, pro-state capture, and to control everything. So the expert person was forced out of the way. So we lost a lot of expertise in the process. And expertise on high level don't exist anymore. And that's on all levels. So management become a problem. It was through to the people that is actually doing the work, because now they can't do the work and there must now be BEE, and it's getting worse and worse. And in the end, money is being taken, but no maintenance is being done. And that's why the parliament burned in Cape Town, because there wasn't maintenance done for the past couple of years.
That's a good point, and we were about to shift gears and get to the Zondo Commission as well as the new year starting out. So let me frame this one, and we'll talk about this. So I think it's just really an apt metaphor for ANC governance or lack thereof. So interesting development here. Early New Year, what's the first thing happens? South Africa's parliament building catches on fire and burns for an entire day. Massive destruction to the National Assembly building. And we find out from Patricia de Lille, the minister responsible for things, and also from others that work at the parliament, number one, that the sprinkler valves were shut off in December. Apparently, there's still no confirmation from the government, but I've talked to a few reliable sources in South Africa who said it had something to do with a fire drill that was going on in December, which I'll accept. Okay, you want to shut them off, or you don't want to get the building soaked if you're doing a drill. But then should there be a supervisor or a leader that goes behind and follows and makes sure that all the valves are reopened?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
The fire control computer
Yes.
has been stolen 2 years ago and haven't been replaced.
Well, there you go. There you go.
So even if everything was turned on, it could not work because the computer was stolen that is controlling all the stuff. And it hasn't been serviced since 2019.
2017, actually.
Some of it 2020.
Yeah.
And the company responsible for its contract expired in 2019, and no new company was appointed. But when I watched that very first footage, where Patricia de Lille was standing in front of Parliament, and you saw this plume of smoke rising from the middle. Mm-hmm. At that moment, to me, it was a symbol of the end. The symbol of an end of an era that did not end well. I cannot describe how I felt at that moment, but it was as I just received this idea, this message. Now it's over in South Africa.
Well, somebody actually trying to be funny, and it was actually kind of funny, said that the smoke coming out because the smoke changed color, and we were trying to decide whether the ANC was going to be the government still or someone else, like the Pope when they do that in the Vatican, the smoke goes from black to white or whatever. So yeah, no, but it gets worse. It gets worse. So not only were the contracts not serviced and the system not inspected, but the fire extinguishers were out of date. I have the reports from the Cape Town Fire Department for the past 3 years pointing out the same deficiencies that are never corrected over and over again, year after year. And on top of that, the head of security at Parliament, Zelda, not Holtzapfel, what's her name? I can't remember her last name right now, but the woman that was in charge of that, a color lady in charge of security at the Parliament, she was suspended in 2015 under odd circumstances. In other words, she probably did anything wrong. And in 2017, she was sacked. So effectively, for 6.5 years, there's been no head of security at Parliament. How can a piece of critical infrastructure where the president shows up every day and the cabinet is at every day not have a head of security? A permanent head of security. That's insane. And then, of course, we saw that there were no cops watching the CCTV footage. So why even have cameras if you're not going to watch them? And then, of course, there were no guards in the building because they claimed they couldn't pay overtime. This is a perfect metaphor on how inept and how Congo-like the ANC is in its approach to governing South Africa.
Yeah, I think this is just endorse what we have been saying all along, that the ANC is completely incapable of running a country.
Yep.
And in the process, this burn down of parliament is direct result of that incompetence. All the documents, all the historic portraits, everything has been destroyed. But then there has been a call for the destruction of colonialism, for the heritage of colonialism. Calls had gone out before the time that the parliament must move to Pretoria or Midrand and those places. And so I think that this fire was started deliberately, not by accident, and it wasn't done by a homeless person. Because this is now the third fire that has been started, and every time it's a homeless person that starts the fire. The UCT fire, there was another effort at UCT earlier, and the Parliament fire, all homeless people. And you know what? Nobody is going, the real culprit is not going to be found.
No, I agree with you 100%. And that is the problem, of course. I mean, look at things. Okay, let's objectively look at what happened at Brockenfell on the 20th of November last year. The EFF stirring trouble, claiming that it was a racist school because there were no black teachers there. But I don't see them raising trouble about the lack of white teachers or Indian teachers at schools in KZN. That are all black. They have no white teachers. So if you're worried, why aren't you worried about that? They're just hypocrites. So they try to stoke this racial hatred nonsense, ignoring the fact that residents of Brockenfell overwhelmingly are colored and white, and the student body is overwhelmingly colored and white. That's kind of representing the population there. And also, it was a private school, not a public school. So a judge foolishly gives them a permit to have 100 demonstrators show up to, antagonize and intimidate school students. And so instead of 100 EFF supporters, 3,000 to 5,000 knob carry, punga, and golf club wielding thugs show up pretending to be some sort of impy marching on the school. And then when the police turn a water cannon on them, they run like cockroaches. It was just awesome. But nobody in the EFF is held to account for this. No one is charged with an unlawful assembly, violating COVID restrictions and laws. No one goes to jail. When Julius Malema exhorts his followers to attack clicks locations over a insensitive and stupid ad that a black employee put on a website and then removed within an hour, they attack 44 clicks locations, including one with a Molotov cocktail, a petrol bomb, and they intimidate people. They break into stores, they destroy them. That's domestic terrorism. Not a single charge leveled against Julius Malema. It's rules for the ruling cabal and rules for the rest of South Africa, and it's destroying the country from within.
Yeah. The previous time I've talked about it, this is causing extremely racial polarization in South Africa. Like never before. Like never before. And of course, people are getting angry, more angry. And we are watching how a perfectly well-functioning country is being destroyed and driven into the ground. And as responsible citizens, for how long must we endure it? When does it become your duty to protect?
Yeah, exactly.
But now we are talking dangerous stuff, But the point is, at a stage, things are going to give way in this whole situation.
No, it's definitely a point of where it feels like the bow is going to break. It's absolutely crazy. And I don't think either one of us is predicting anything bad here, and we don't want to see bad things. But honestly, I mean, the ANC doesn't have the support of the people. I don't care what anyone tries to claim. When only 13% of people can be bothered of eligible voters, only 13% can be bothered to show up for the ruling party. That just shows you that they're not popular, without a doubt. And when only 31% of eligible voters can bother to show up for an election, one in which it's clear clear that the trajectory of the malfeasance and malgovernance can be changed by simply voting for an opposition party. Take your pick. There's 24 opposition parties. Go vote for one of them. In an election like that, and only 1 out of 3 people less than that turn out to vote, it also shows that the population is apathetic or doesn't trust the system at all.
Yeah. But you could have seen it this past weekend with the 110th anniversary of the ANC, their birthday. And they are as incapable of a 110-year-old person at the moment. Now, Friday evening, people paid to sit with the president 1.2 million rand.
$80,000 US. Yep.
Yeah, and some guys $1 million to sit with the vice president, and then it comes down.
Yeah.
And minutes after Cyril started with his speech, the lights went out. And then they whisked him away to safety, and the lights came back on. Now, that was a deliberate action to keep him from addressing the people or from speaking. Mm-hmm. That could have only happened by people inside the party.
Yep.
Who have done that.
Yep.
And then on Saturday, if you look at the footage, they only show the grandstand in front.
Yep.
And there's very few people attending this 110th anniversary festival.
Yep.
Meanwhile, you get Ace Magashule who is having his own party down in Natal, also for the ANC.
Yes.
And his own ANC birthday. It's crazy.
Yeah.
And this morning, during my chat, I told the people that, yesterday, I don't know when, this morning, that, when Ace was now fired, he was arrested, and everybody in the newspapers, in the media says, now Ace is gone. The surprise is Ace is just starting with these problems. Yeah. He's just starting with these, I always said the wrong word, the S word, but he's starting with these stuff now. And he's not going to stop. But somehow we are conditioned to believe that if a guy here is indicted, arrested, imprisoned for a while, it's his end. No. That's not the case. The Zondo Commission, with all those guilty partners, not one positive arrest, except a few low-level guys, but nobody else. And you know what? I read in the newspaper, they say there's no money to prosecute the Zondo Commission people.
Yeah, no, you're right about that. The S word, do you mean cock? Is that what you're trying to say? Is that the S word? Was that the one you were thinking of a moment ago? I think that's what it was. But
yes.
Yes. That's the one. No, but I agree with you 100%. You're absolutely spot on with this. It's there are going to be no prosecution. If you look at the VBS, the Venda Bank scandal, which the EFF is deeply embroiled in, Floyd Shivambu and his brother deeply involved in that corruption era, and probably also Julius Malema. But for sure, those two are. But if you look at that, the only prosecution, only conviction in that case thus far is the white guy who took the plea and pled guilty. He's the only person prosecuted for this crime. And all these poor Venda South Africans defrauded of their entire life savings. It's absolutely crazy.
Thanks.
Is that the signal to get, you're getting the hook or are you getting a drink?
No, she bring me my fresh cup of coffee.
Oh, okay. Well, we just got a super chat from Guardian Prepping, 70 Rand. He's supporting. Thanks a lot, Guardian Prepping. There's the cowbell. Thanks for the super chat. You
must put it around your neck, Chris.
Well, yeah, I'd maybe do that. Yeah, but
Or in your beard?
It would be hidden by the, yeah. I'd lace it to my beard because it'd be hidden by the beard, but it's not long enough. Maybe I need a longer string. But that's a good idea. But you've kind of opened the window there. We were going to get to the Zondo Commission, so I have the first volume. A lot of people are upset because they don't understand the process. Like, well, what about this? What about that? Well, no, the Zondo Commission is releasing 3 volumes. And they'll be released to the president initially and the parliament. The good news is they gave this one to the public instantaneously, which I appreciate. But 3 volumes. The last one is scheduled to be delivered on February 28th. So sometime between now and 28th February, we get the second volume. Each volume is addressing different aspects of state capture. The first one was focused on South African Airways and the South African Revenue Services. And that's what it's talking about there. And in that list, I've gone through and found at least 50 or 60 prominent names in the African National Congress who've been recommended for prosecution for crimes. And here's the thing. I had a conversation with Rob Hutchison last week on our program, and Rob was of the opinion that the money spent in Zondo was a waste. And I said, if you look at it from the standpoint that it'll likely never lead to prosecutions, I agree with you. That's a waste of resource and money, R1 billion spent on it. But what you have now, if someone actually chooses to pursue it and the world cares to pay attention, is you have prima facie evidentiary collection, witness testimony, and you have prosecutable information right there. Anybody, even a mildly competent prosecutor, can take that report and use it as evidence to put all these ghouls in jail. The question is, will they do it? And I think the answer is no.
No, definitely not. They won't go to jail, and they won't even prosecute. The guys behind the scene, the big guys, will never face trial.
Yeah.
They will grab a couple of low-level guys, and the 1 or 2 or 3 which they have made the scapegoats. And they have long time ago decided that they will zoom in on Zuma. But before we go that way, I want to come back to the parliament.
Okay.
You know that the calls for the parliament to move to Pretoria or Midrand by Carl Neus of the Umkhonto we Sizwe Veterans Organization, and then, of course, by Julius Malema, where they say, well, if we sell the property to developers, we are going to make a hell of a lot of money, and then we can build a new parliament, and you'll probably have money to spare. The problem is, and that's a big problem, the parliament was built upon the land of the Freemasons. And they have bought the land from the Freemasons for £1. And the deal was always that when they sell the land, they have to sell it back to the Freemasons for this amount. So it's worth 20 rand. Once this becomes news to people like Malema and like Carl Neus and the population on the ground, we are going to see again a reason for extreme violence. Because this is the stuff that the ordinary person in the street don't know about. So I foresee a big problem there over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, that's a good point. You know, it's interesting how people lose track of things. For instance, Stellenbosch University, the land was granted in perpetuity on the precondition that the university would always have the medium of instruction in Afrikaans. Yet they've effectively tried to eliminate Afrikaans at that campus, making an argument that English should be the median when less than 9% of South Africans speak English as their first language. It's not your first language. It's a second language for you. And for 91% of South Africans, it's not their first language. Yet they're trying to, of course, it's cultural genocide is what it is. They're trying to wipe out Afrikaans on the basis that, well, it's racist white language when it's not. It's an African language adapted from Dutch and from Indonesian and Khoi and San and other contributions to it. And it is a truly African language, and it's the world's newest language, and they're trying to stamp it out when the majority of people that speak it are actually people of color, not white folks. The irony.
No, that is true. But I think the more pressure they put on Afrikaans, the more it will survive. We have reached a point in South Africa, almost a point of resistance, where most of the people don't want to go with this flow of change in things. For the past 27 years, we have been giving away everything. Control, force, you name it. What hasn't been given away? Even businesses by BEE and support, welfare, and all those things to no avail. There was nothing to gain for the white or the Afrikaans-speaking people, which includes the colors. There was nothing to gain by giving away. So now we have reached a point where we say, well, we are not going to give anything more away because we don't have anything to give away except the ability to survive and to make money. But that's what they want, the money.
Yeah. I mean, that's what it's all about. It really is about that. You know, I've talked about this many times in my program. There's a book written by a Kenyan journalist called Michaela Wrong. Interesting surname. Her last name is Wrong. But Michaela Wrong wrote this book, It's Our Turn to Eat, talking about the pervasive corruption in the Kenyan government. And I think that's an apt phrase for much of Africa. Even in places I've lived where I absolutely love the country and the peoples, it's the government's usually the problem. It's our turn to eat because people ascend to power. Well, now we either our ethnic group or our political affiliation, we are going to profit from the state. You know, I think it's a really sad commentary on much of Africa, but particularly in South Africa, that a lot of young South Africans don't aspire to be doctors or dentists or soldiers or farmers or carpenters, electricians. They aspire to be ANC cadre, so that they can be part of the BEE process, so they can award the tenders and they can get their kickbacks and they can have power without any talent. And that's a really sad remark because that's where much of Africa has gone. In countries throughout Africa, the key to success, you are successful not if you invent a new application that makes life easier or people can bank, not if you develop a new vaccine that protects people from a disease, not if you become a healer that treats people and heals their condition. You are a success if you get in government because that's where the money's at, that's where the power's at, that's how you can do things. But government doesn't build anything. It simply takes and confiscates from society and it distributes in the way that it wants. So that's not building. That's picking winners and losers. And that's what's happened across Africa in the post-independence era. And that's what's been happening in South Africa, probably for 27 years, but clearly, without a doubt, for 15 years.
Yeah. I normally describe it as the three circles. Mm-hmm. You've got the inner circle of the city, which is under government control. Then you've got the band around it, which is white capital, where they moved out of the cities and create the security complexes, housing complexes, where they developed businesses and malls and stuff. And then surrounding them, you got the third circle, which is the largest, which is the unemployed masses in the squatter camps. So people living on this middle band are living they don't even notice anything because between the house, the church, and the school, they move quite safely around, and the mall, of course. They must have a mall to buy. So they are not they are not experiencing the dangers of collapse. And they think, okay, let me rephrase. Mm-hmm. Government on the inside is putting, as you have said, nothing back. They just take the money. The only development that goes in is in the central ring where white capital is going into, where there is business initiative by the people, and they develop, they build, and they believe in the future. But the future depends on the ability of the central core to provide electricity, to provide water services. And once electricity is gone, there's no water, there's no sewage, there's no services, nothing. It's gone.
Yep.
And that's the danger. And people don't realize it because they don't, I talk to certain guys at Eskom and energy people, and South Africa got one proto team left that can actually cold start this effort if the network drops. But if the network drops in South Africa, we won't be able to get enough personnel together to start up one station.
Yeah.
Because how are they going to get there? Who is going to take them if there then is violence and looting going on because there's no power? Who is going to start up the system again? Yep. And that's the big danger here in South Africa currently. And now I've heard that the Department of Nature and Fisheries, they have said no, but the pollution by Eskom is now too high. They have to cut down on their coal stations, emissions. But in the process, they are endangering the stability of the network.
Yeah.
So therefore, one department are forcing them to underperform, and in the end, it can cause the network to collapse because they don't think.
Yep. No, they don't. They think now, maybe tomorrow, but not next week, next month, next year, 5 years, 10, 20 years, let alone 20, 30 years down the road. All my activities in uniform in the military across Africa, every project I worked on, I didn't look at today or tomorrow or a year what the outcome was. My view was what looked like in 5 years, in 10 years. Is this sustainable? Can we do this? Is it worthwhile doing this? And sometimes the answer is no. Sometimes you still do it because it's an exigent circumstance. For instance, training troops to go to Somalia. It's an exigent circumstance, so they're not going to maintain these helicopters I want to buy for them, but we only need them to last for 3 or 4 years to accomplish the mission, so let's buy them. But rarely was that my focus. Normally, are we going to build this for somebody? Who's going to maintain it? Do they have the pipeline? But that's not the focus there. It really isn't. You know, another thing I want to share with you real quick, it's really sad, is that the false attribution of talent and success that is given, not just in Africa, we see this in the States too, like Joe Biden is some kind of genius politician. 38 years in the U.S. Senate, the only bill he ever authored or co-authored was the crime bill in 1994, which incarcerated black Americans on drug charges for mandatory 10-year drug sentences. That's his signature piece of legislation in 38 years in the Senate. He accomplished nothing as the vice president of the United States, and now he's done nothing but destroy this country and the world in less than a year as president. Now, we look at South Africa.
Yes.
Cyril, yeah, good.
You know what? I've said it many times. If the military has controlled the world, we wouldn't have wars.
Yeah, because we don't want to go to war. We're smart.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But everything, the mishaps, is caused by politicians.
Exactly.
Who have never actually worked for their money, except the fact that they are representing the people. But are they representing the people, or are they just there?
Yep.
Once they get there, they forget the people who voted them in. And your career politicians in the United States. That's why I was so excited when Donald Trump came into power. And people said, yes, but he's a businessman. I said, yes, it's fine, it's good. Because if you are a good manager, a good businessman, you can be a good president, because you can get all the specialists.
And the resources together, gather them together.
And get their knowledge. A good leader, a good manager can run anything. But a career politician of 40 years, and if he's not a natural leader, will get nowhere. But okay, we are probably not here to talk about the United States tonight, nah?
No, but then I was about to shift. You know, the thing that's disturbing for me, and let's give two examples in Africa of false attribution of talent and success. Cyril Ramaphosa, go back to 2017. He'll make a great president. He's a businessman. He's accomplished. He's not accomplished. He was handed equity stakes. He was given his wealth. He didn't earn anything. They gave him approximately $400 million worth of equity. If you had given me $400 million worth of equity in 1995, 1996, I would have a net worth of over $4 to $5 billion today. I guarantee it. And I could just say that based on the tiny amount of money if I had to invest that I've invested for the last 30 years. If I'd have had that kind of money, I would be a multi-billionaire over now just from investing, let alone creating new businesses. He isn't talented at business. He has no success. And then one more, because you've been to Angola, Isabella dos Santos. Forbes Africa hailed her as the wealthiest woman in Africa, a brilliant businesswoman. She's not. She's a criminal. Every dollar she got came because of patronage, because of her father. And now, after her father's out of power, she's been exposed. She's been arrested. She's been charged. It's all fraud. And people, the media, Forbes, one of the most iconic business magazines in the world, which starts an Africa edition, they hail her as if she's some sort of genius. She's not. And neither is Cyril Ramaphosa. And this false attribution of success and talent misleads people when they should be going, wait a second, how did Ramaphosa become the owner of all these McDonald's? Did he save money? Did he invest? Did someone hire him because he was a brilliant man? No, he got it because of patronage, because he was connected. And that is illegitimate, fraudulent, and actually destroys commerce because it puts incompetent people in charge of resources.
Yeah, no, that's true. You know, about 2 years ago, during a mining concession, not a concession, a convention where international miners and everybody came together.
Is this the mining Indaba?
Was one of the journalists.
The mining Indaba, is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
Okay.
Mining Indaba, but convention Indaba, whatever you want to call it, Bosberaad as well. But the point is, the international journalists, they wrote specific about how the young black entrepreneurs arrived there in their supercars, showing off their wealth. Mm-hmm. But you can't find one of them. They've put 1 cent of their wealth back into business and create jobs.
Yep.
If you was given 50 million rand, just 50 million or 10, think about how many jobs you could have created with that money.
I'm sorry if I just a super chat just came in. 2 of them came in. We'll come back to that topic in a second if you don't mind. I've got to address this. So first, Nick Muller gave a 70 Rand super chat. And he says, apologies for the interpretation. I think he means interruption, probably a typo. Is there a possibility for monthly or weekly Colonel's Fireside chat? I don't know. I think we get along pretty well. Our conversations, we go a lot of places. Maybe we can discuss it offline. I don't want to put Wyatt on the spot and ask him to commit to do that. He's got his own broadcast, and he's quite proficient in English. But speaking 6 languages myself, I know at times it can be taxing when you're searching for that word. But he and I will discuss it offline if it's something that's of interest to viewers. Several people have mentioned this previously, and I think that's why Nick Muller super chatted. Nick, I'll address it. We'll talk about it offline. I don't want to put Wyatt on the spot. That wouldn't be fair to him. But I am amenable to it. If say a monthly one or bi-weekly, or maybe I don't know. I've just started a regular weekly with Rob Hutchison called Answer the Question. So I'll talk to him, and he's nodding his head. So I think he might be interested in it. So we'll see. And then Waldo Kern just sent 5,000 Swedish kroner. I thought that said South African rand, but wow, that SEK is Swedish kroner, isn't it? And I'm going to butcher this, Wyatt, but I'm going to try to speak it. I think he's talking about this as, I think I know what he says. Hos smaakt die condensed milk coffee, Cornell? I think he's saying, how does your condensed coffee milk taste? Is that what he's saying?
Yes, that's what he's saying.
Okay, so it tastes pretty good, but I got to say, before you answer that 5,000 Swedish kroner, this super chat revenue for this stream is more than I got for half of December. That's over $500 was just super chatted, folks. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for that super chat. That is the single largest super chat on any of my programs ever. I don't know what to say other than bye donkey, ke alabor, merci mille fois, vielen Dank. Ich bedanke mich, das ist aber nett von dir. Thank you very much. Go ahead, Wyatt. You're going to say about your coffee. Do you have milk in your coffee as well?
You see, it's a story I want to tell you about it. During the days of the Bush War,
yes,
Border War, early mornings when you had your first cup of coffee, of course, we didn't have milk with us when you are deployed in the field. So you only got a little bit, a tin of condensed milk or a tube that came in later. So you put this condensed milk into your coffee and you mix it, and it's nice and sweet, and you put your dog biscuit inside and you chew, and it's nice. And I always say that cup of condensed milk coffee determines your day. In other words, the more you enjoy it, the better the day will be. And everybody that was on the border did it, and they enjoyed their morning coffee. So it is something from the past that we remember. And when I talk in the mornings on my channel, I started first off by telling the story about the condensed milk, and I told the people, well, enjoy your condensed milk. And the next day I did not do it. And then I was reprimanded by a couple of people and say, but what about the condensed milk? So that's where it started, over the condensed milk coffee.
Gotcha.
And because it's something that you remember, it's something that took your memories back. And I always said, you know, if you have to make a decision, go and sit against the tree, drink condensed milk coffee and smoke a cigarette, and you'll make a good decision. So this tin here is a condensed milk tin.
Yeah.
A condensed milk tin. And there's a guy who is making this cups out of it, of the empty tins. So he's probably drinking more condensed milk than I'm drinking, because I'm sitting here with almost 30 of these little mugs, which is designated to certain people. But yeah, cheers on the condensed milk coffee.
Oh, that's awesome. That's a great story. You know, it's I have kind of a strange relationship with coffee. We can actually see the stamp on the bottom, the expiration date, to tell it is a condensed milk can when you tipped it up. But you know, it's and it also reminds me very quickly is that when I was a kid, we used to get the Carnation condensed milk, and you pop the edge open a little bit and you drink it straight out of the container. It was really thick and syrupy and sweet. I remember that. It's been a long time since I did that.
But Chris,
yeah,
you are only allowed to do it once a month, because your doctor would not approve the amount of sugar. But if you open the tin of condensed milk and you put Milo.
Yeah.
You know what is Milo?
Yeah, it's like a hot chocolate. It's a chocolatey stuff. Yep.
Yeah. A teaspoon of that, you mix it. Man, oh man, that is great.
Yeah, no, I'm with you 100% on that. You know, you speak of the coffee in the morning, and you're absolutely right. For the military, if you're in deployment or you're in the field or something like that, that morning coffee, things really don't get started. You know, for the morning meetings or the rehearsals to go out on patrol, people got to get that coffee. And of course, back in the day, your day and my day back those days, it was also the smokes too. People pop out the smokes and have a cigarette if they can, if it's tactically sound. I didn't smoke, but and I didn't drink coffee, so that kind of left me out of that. But I would make myself some hot chocolate, not Milo, but the kind that came in our rations. And having hot chocolate in the morning, particularly when it's cold in the wintertime and you're getting ready to go out on patrol or something like that, really makes a huge difference. So, yeah, that's right. I remember that condensed milk thing because I think I've heard you talk about that before. But thank you for the generous super chat, Waldo Kern from Sweden. That's very kind of you. Thank you so much for that. That's pretty crazy to see that. But, you know, we were talking about by the way, that's clever. I like that tin with the condensed milk that's turned into a tin. That's necessity is the mother of invention. That's pretty clever. But you know, the Zondo Commission, I think both of us have hit on the head. We don't really expect to see anyone serious prosecuted for it. There it is. There it again. Check it out, folks. That is really cool. Yeah. That is awesome. Now I've got a similar one, but mine is just stainless steel. It doesn't have any cool history like that. It's just one for rations. But I find that those are great, the stainless steel ones, because if it's wintertime and it's cold or it's a cold morning, even in the spring or something like that, you put your hands around, of course, and it warms your hands up because the heat radiates from the stainless steel pretty quickly. Whereas if it was ceramic, it would take a lot longer to come out. So, and plus it wouldn't be durable when you're bouncing around a patrol. If it was ceramic, it gets smashed when you're on patrol. But that steel could take a beating. We got a break up there. Are you still there?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm actually waiting for you to ask something. Ask me a question or whatever. But because if I started talking about these things, we are going to talk tonight. Yeah.
Well, let's save.
You said you didn't smoke.
No, I didn't smoke.
Me neither.
Okay.
But I started smoking in prison.
Ah, yeah.
And I don't know whether I've told you the story.
Go ahead.
Did I?
I think we've talked about it a little bit because you hadn't smoked and went into prison, but I'm trying to recall if I remember the story. So go ahead and tell it, because I'm sure a lot of our audience doesn't know the story. So go ahead and share it.
Every evening when the Cubans brought me my food, there was a packet of cigarettes and a box of matches. And because I had nothing to do in the cell, I decided one night, but I'm going to try a cigarette. And I smoked the cigarette. It was something to do. And before I knew it, I was smoking 3 packets of cigarettes a day.
Ooh, ooh.
And I was hooked on smoking. And then they took the cigarettes away.
Ah.
And they gave me only 10. So all of a sudden, I had to plan my day. I can smoke the first cigarette when I woke up. Then I have to do an activity. Then I can smoke again until I smoke the 10th one before I go to bed. And one of my biggest problems being in the prison, in the cell, was routine. And I realized that if I was not going to be able to get into a routine of kinds, to discipline myself to do certain things, I will go crazy, I will go mad. And the cigarettes helped me, the 10 cigarettes helped me to get into a fixed routine. So it actually saved me while I was in prison. The problem is I never stopped. But I've changed over to a vape, as you can see.
Yeah, that's a lot. That's probably a lot healthier than the cigarettes. You know, it's interesting. You talk about that. I've talked about Senator John McCain, who's since passed away recently. I actually knew him personally. And I first met him as a lieutenant. He came to Fort Huachuca, the intelligence school, because he was a senator in Arizona. He came there when I was a second lieutenant, and he introduced himself. And of course, you know, for people who know me, they know I go by Chris because I was born on Christmas Day, but it's not my legal name. It's actually William. And so if you remember me as Chris, then your brain has made a point of remembering who I am, and it's not just, you know, you see my name somewhere or I'm wearing a name tag. So he saw me as a lieutenant, and then I came back to the advanced course for intelligence officers about 5 years later after combat and deployments and other events. I came back to Arizona, and Senator McCain went down frequently to meet with military at the bases. And so he was there again, and I went to the officers club because we still had them at that time. They disappeared shortly after that, but I went, it was already a community club, not an officers club anymore. All ranks could go there. So I went to the club, and he walked up to me, and of course, there's nothing that says Chris on my name. I just in uniform with my name tag, Wyatt. And he goes, "Chris, how have you been? What's going on?" This is 5 years later. I only met him for like 20 minutes conversation, and he remembered. And I often wondered how it was. And I realized that when he was in the Hanoi Hilton in Vietnam, in North Vietnam, in Hanoi, that because of the way they were treated and their isolation, he worked his mind and he worked his memory and developed, and he probably had a good one to begin with, but he had an uncanny knack for remembering people, places, and events like that, instant recall. I saw him again, because people might say, well, Chris, that's a one-off. He just happened to remember your name, or somebody mentioned it at night. You could say that, but then a year and a half later, when they were running for the 96 election against Clinton, he was supporting his friend Phil Gramm from Texas, and he was helping campaign for him. They came to Iowa, where I was teaching at university, for the Iowa caucuses, the first election event for the cycle to select candidates. Yeah. And they had an event in a Pizza Hut in the basement. And one of my students have asked me to come to it, and I wasn't going to go. I said, I don't get involved in politics. He goes, no, it's just, I understand, you know, Senator McCain, he's going to be there. I said, oh, okay, well, I'll come. It's civilian clothes. It's not a political. So I went to it, and I'm in the basement of this Pizza Hut in a party room, and there's a bunch of political people down there. Senator McCain sees me across the room. I looked up and noticed it because I'm talking to someone, and he makes a beeline and comes right over and he goes, "Captain Wyatt, Chris, how you doing? How you been?" It's amazing. So let me ask you this question. When you were a prisoner of war, did you experience similar things? Because you're talking about the cigarettes helping you develop a discipline. Did you also do things for your body, calisthenics, push-ups, sit-ups inside the prison on a routine basis to keep your mind and body fit? And did you do memory tricks to keep your mind? Was that part of what happened, if you don't mind sharing?
Yeah. You know, when you are in a place like that, it's very important. They always say that you have to remember well when you are lying. Because if you have to lie again, the story must stay the same.
Exactly. And
to a great extent, that is what happened. Because what I told them, they have, came back over time, and they would have asked me about the same subject. So I had to remember exactly what I said the previous time. And I even made small notes so that I remember everything. But later on, that wasn't necessary anymore because the story becomes so real that you will remember it. But on the exercise part, yes, of course, every day. You know, inside the cell, I will walk 1,000 times around the table, but to the right, clockwise. Okay, and then I can smoke a cigarette. Then I walk 1,000 times around the left side. Then I do a certain amount of sit-ups. Push-ups was very difficult because I had an iron pin in my arm. The arm was shot off. And the Cubans, they actually used a leg pin, upper leg splint to put into my shoulder, and it stick out at the top. So that made it very difficult to move this arm. But they saved the arm. They could have just cut it off.
Yep.
But they did save it. And for which I'm very grateful at that stage. So yeah, push-ups was difficult and all that type of exercises. But what I could have done with my legs and my back and neck and all those stomach exercises, that I could do. And I did.
Yeah. No, and it's
that's why I don't want to exercise today.
Well, speak of exercise, I mean, Yossi, who's in Israel, is watching the chat, and Yossi said to me, because Yossi, what's that? Says Yossi, something about also no coffee, no bananas, no onions. What else, Chris? Yeah, I don't like coffee. I don't like bananas. I don't like onions. I'm a very fussy eater, and even in combat, I'm a very fussy eater. I'll go hungry rather than eat something I like. And then Erica tells him, I don't eat lamb or mutton either. That's true. I also don't eat goat, in case you're curious about it. That might explain why at my advanced age, I'm still quite thin, because I just won't eat those things.
Now, if I want to eat anything like vegetables or so, I'll eat chicken.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's meat. But then we are African, eh? We eat meat.
Yep.
Outside of Uppington, there's a big board saying, you are now in red meat country.
That's true.
And that's very American.
Oh, yeah, no, beef is a big American thing, although they're trying to stop us from having and enjoying beef. It's really big. I remember years ago, Robert Mitchum did that commercial for the beef industry. Beef, it's what's for dinner, with that deep voice of his. It was great commercials. Never forget that. Yeah, beef is a big part of American culture, just like it is for the Trek Boers and Afrikaners. Beef is a big part of our culture. But for you all, it's meat, period. Your braais, you just love meat. You toss it on there and enjoy meat. Now, of course, for poultry, we're also huge turkey consumers. I prefer turkey over chicken.
Now, turkey, that I haven't eaten for years and years. But mutton, sheep, beef, and, of course, goats. I love goat meat.
Oh.
You don't eat goat?
No, I've had lots of Africans try to trick me into eating goat by offering me food in West Africa in particular.
No, Chris. It's great. If you look at all the fat is ingrained in the meat.
Yeah. It's
not on the side of the meat. It's on the side. It's inside. Little grains of meat of fat. No, it's great. Of course, I also love fish a lot.
Yeah, fish is a good choice. But I do have to share this, folks. For those of you that might be rocking up when I get to Uppington, when I make my next trip to South Africa and I go by and see Wynand, if he offers me a braai, could you sneak in some KFC 3-piece Streetwise meal? Because I'm going to starve if he's going to be offering goat at the braai.
No. Okay, I'll take you for KFC. And there's a McDonald's in Uppington as well.
Okay.
Yeah. And sometimes my kids want to eat KFC, and it's okay. They can do that. But when they ask me for McDonald's, that's when I refuse.
I got you. No, honestly, if I no, just all kidding aside, I'd rather go to Panarotti's or Romans. That'd be my preference. Not McDonald's or KFC. I'm not a big KFC fan, but it's that's interesting. Hey, someone made a comment here, and I think we talked about this before. When they held you as a prisoner of war, they did allow you to have a Bible, correct? You had a Bible in your cell with you?
Yes. Good news for modern man. It's the New Testament, English Bible, and it was given to me within 3 days after I was captured.
Okay, that's very considerate of them.
And it was given to me by a guy called Carlos, who was from the KGB. He was a Russian. He was later killed in a landmine explosion, but he gave it to me. And I read it 3 times, from beginning to end. That, of course, was for me a tremendous experience while I was there. Because when you are in a situation where you was taken prisoner of war, you are sitting within the walls, you are almost assaulted by emotions of, if God is there, why don't he help you?
Yeah.
Why have you been captured? You ask these questions, why me? Why does it happen to me? But over a period of 837 days, where that's the only, I don't want to say person, but the only person I can talk to is God. Things start to change over time, and you develop a relationship which is unequal to any church or any other denomination, and it's really first class, and you can see what is happening. A big lead to me while I was there was a little book written by Merlin Carruthers. Now, Merlin Carruthers was a chaplain in the American Army. And if you Google him, you will find his name there somewhere. And he wrote a book, Prison to Praise. And he said in the book that you must never ask for something. You must praise the Lord for everything that has happened to you. He said that the moment where you start praising instead of asking, things will start changing in your life. Now, believe it or not, 3 months after I decided to follow Merlin Carruthers' advice, I was released from prison.
Wow.
So that, now connecting to the fact that they gave me the Bible, I think that after I returned to South Africa, I had extreme problems adapting to going to church. Mm-hmm. It was a difficult thing for me because I'm sitting there and I'm listening to a person who have not even experienced 10 days in solitary confinement.
Yeah.
How can he possibly teach me anything? Now, that's a wrong attitude, but that's how I experienced it.
No, it's understandable.
And the dogma around the church, the religiousness about how you must pray and how you must do things, I didn't agree with it at all. And the moment when I decided that I walk out of, let's say, formal church, that was the day when I felt free. Mm-hmm. That was the day that I became a free person. I am more religious than I was ever before in my life. Mm-hmm. I know where we are going. I know the importance of prayer, but it's between me and God, and not some youngster from the university telling me how I must live, how I must do certain things. And I always say, go and sit for 837 days in solitary confinement and come back, and then you come and argue with me about it.
Yeah, fair point.
There's nothing wrong with my religion, but that's how I feel about it. So before attacking me or trying to tell me how to live, come and do the same. Go through the same experience.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. No. So yes, they gave, to answer your question, they gave me a Bible. That's Afrikaans. They gave me a Bible, and it meant a tremendous lot to me.
Well, you know, it's interesting because people are always asking questions about faith. They come on my program, especially the older program. And I tell people, I said, look, I don't have anything against organized churches. They serve a purpose for communities. But a church is not a prerequisite for a relationship with your deity. I mean, that's a personal relationship that you have or don't have with your deity. If you believe in a deity, then that's between you and your God. And that's, you know, I have not been in an organized church other than for an official function or something like that, you know, for worshiping in decades. But that doesn't mean I'm not a person of faith. Doesn't mean I don't have a relationship. It just means that I don't feel the need to go into a community with others to profess my faith or to listen to someone preach and be reminded about what's important. I can do that on my own. And so I think kind of along the same lines as you, I've got the same thought on that the church isn't necessary. But I hold nothing against it. People have churches for a reason. It's a way for a community to come together and to worship together and to do charitable things together. And that's noble. I have no issue with that. But for people who try to demonize you because you're not a regular churchgoer, those are people I have a problem with, because it's not about attendance at church. That's virtue signaling, just going to church. It's about how you live your life. It's about how you conduct yourself. It's how you have this relationship or don't have this relationship with God or not with God. And that's, I think you and I are probably 100% in agreement on that.
Yeah. And being a soldier yourself, you know that when you go into combat, the situations which you have survived, which you wasn't supposed to survive.
Yep.
There's no more proof than that.
Now
that gives one a sort of a calm when you come to this. But anyway, we have covered that one.
Yeah, we've covered quite a bit. But I just one last comment on that is that something you mentioned there, and I'll save it for another time. I was going to ask you about whether you want that if you gave up hope or you wondered if your government is ever going to make an effort to get you out. But we'll save that for another conversation. But what I did want to say about that last piece you just said there is that, you know, as a soldier, you go to combat. I made my peace before I went to the Gulf War, and I contacted a friend who taught me Swahili at university, and I wrote to him and gave him instructions if I didn't survive the war, because I was going on paper into a combat with the third largest army in the world, and apparently, supposedly, an army that was impressive, the Iraqi army. Turns out it wasn't nearly as impressive as they made it out to be, but we didn't know that. We're going into combat. It's my first time, a young man. I'm a young officer. I'm a second lieutenant at that time, going into combat for the first time, and I'm going into it battle in an armor unit, but I'm not riding in an M1 Abrams tank, which is very well protected, but rather in an aluminum armored personnel carrier, which makes a nice target for anti-tank weapons. So I made my peace, and after the Gulf War was over, I came back with all my fingers, all my toes. I was healthy. I survived the war. And every day since then, in my view, has been a blessing. I honestly didn't expect to come back from that combat. I was in a frontline combat unit against an army with 750,000 troops that had been fighting wars for 2 decades. And we were told about chemical weapons. We were given all these experimental medications to protect us. And I thought I might not come back. Now, I wasn't being morose, but I made that peace, and every day since that day has been a blessing. And I suspect that when you got your freedom, you probably feel the same way.
I do. And I must... This one is not in the tin.
Okay.
But, Chris, I think if when you chat to fellow soldiers, you will find some people will be okay. You get there is people who have lost their faith as well, while in combat.
Yeah.
When you see a armor vehicle or infantry combat vehicle being shot out with a lot of dead youngsters inside, it makes a difference in your life. And you will ask the questions, to what purpose did this happen? And there is quite a lot of people who have lost their faith because of that. Mm-hmm. But you will find them later on returning back to their beliefs and everything. But fortunately, I never went through a situation like that, that I have to ask the question. I always said that there's a purpose behind everything. It's preparation for later in your life. Whatever you experience during your life is preparation for what you have to become. And here you are sitting now, Chris Wyatt, and you are talking, and you got this show. You don't even know what the real purpose in your life might be, because your life is not over until it's over. So you don't know what is in store for you. What this channel can do for you is incredible, but you might end up in Congress or in the Senate. Who knows?
God forbid.
And that's the point. One is being prepared for certain roles and things that you must do, things that you must fulfill. And really, you don't have a choice. You can bugger out this way or that way, you will be brought back onto course. Because your life path is there. And you can't get away from it, even if you want to. Yep. So if you want to get away from it, you will succeed for a very small while. You can go and hide in the Bahamas.
Pull you back.
And you will go back. That's the point.
You'll get pulled back. That's. I think it's very insightful. It's awesome of you to say that. I mean, not about me, but about life in general. I think it's a fair point. We may think, you see a lot of people throughout their lives who reinvent themselves and accomplish different things and do different things, and other people kind of stumble through life, and at some point they make their impact, and then others who just never make an impact. I think the important thing is that we should take each day and be grateful for it and the opportunity we have, and make the most of it, and not let the, as they say, don't let the bastards grind you down. Don't let other people rain on our parade and try to ruin our experiences in life. Make the most of it. You and I will talk offline about whether we want to pursue, doing a more occasional, broadcast together. I think that based on the comments in this chat and the conversation I've been glancing over while we've been talking, people have really enjoyed this conversation, and I think they've enjoyed our conversation in the past. I have to thank you, Baya Donkey. I've really enjoyed this conversation today, and I don't mean to end it, but I have this feeling if I don't, you're going to get trouble from the house there, because we're going to talk for hours, because we could do that. So it's probably best for us to wrap up here shortly. We've been at this for nearly 2 hours. I don't know if you realize it. Almost 2 hours have been chatting.
Yeah, 2 hours. No. Yeah. I thought we are short of 45 minutes.
Yeah, I know, exactly. It was like when I talked to Steve Hofmeyer, and he came on the channel last year, it was the same thing. I got to about an hour and 52 minutes. And of course, I wanted to get Steve back on the channel, so I didn't want him to think that, man, I'm never going to that guy's channel. He never shuts up. We talked for 4 hours that day. I didn't want to do that. But I mean, it's the same sort of thing. It's easy to get into. It's a really good flowing conversation. I think we enjoyed it. And despite your bad connection in Uppington, we managed to get through this conversation pretty well, I think. So what I'd like to do is, we've talked about the Zondo thing not briefly, in a bit, and we've talked about the Cape Town fire. I did want to say this: if anyone contacts you, if they're looking for director of security at the Parliament, I'll consider taking the job if they want a security expert to come to Parliament in Cape Town and run security for the Parliament building when they rebuild it. I'm just saying up front. Anyway, and there's a super chat just came in. Let me address that real quick. It's from Leah Vinyasa from Rendsburg, who's a very generous lady. So there's the bell. And she says, 140 Rand. Thank you, Chris and the Colonel Squared. Yeah, Colonel Squared. I really enjoyed this and would love to have this happen. I think she means for us to chat periodically. So let me give you a chance to say something, then I'll give you the last few minutes to share anything you might want to share, a message of concern, a hope, or just a happy new year to everybody. By the way, I didn't say it on air. Happy new year to you and to your family. It is a new year, and it's somebody.
Yeah, you do.
Thank you very much. Somebody put in the chat when we were talking about Rona earlier. They put hashtag it's over. And I agree. Let's hashtag it's over. Let's get past this nonsense. But I turn the floor over to you, Colonel Wynand du Toit.
Chris, now I enjoyed the chat with you, like I always the ones in the past as well. And I'm quite willing that we look at something. I think for beginning to start out and say we can do it every second week, so that I can just first work it into my program, which is quite hectic at this stage. But technology is such a wonderful thing that you can actually be anywhere with good Wi-Fi or internet, and you can chat. So let's talk about it afterwards, and let's discuss it. People love to hear more about just normal army stories as well, the war story and that type of things. And that also is a great opportunity within that, to just chat to people so that people can realize that despite that all the problems that we are facing in the world is also good. And there's also things that is happening because we still got to live. Even if we are facing the most adverse conditions and possibilities and dangers, we still got to live. And it is that normalcy that you can bring into your chats that actually makes people calm, makes them relax and enjoy it. So, but thanks for the chat tonight. I appreciate that. And from my side, let's see what we can do. And if the people loves it, then let's make it a sort of a more regular thing.
Well, people seem to be fond of the game Fortnite, so maybe it'll be fortnightly with the Colonels, Fireside with the Colonels fortnightly. We'll take a look at that. That might be interesting. It won't be electronic games. But let me thank very quickly the super chats. I really need to do this. I do this all the time, recognize super chats, but I want to thank people for this super chat. Sharon started this off, Sharon Westfall, with 100 Rand. Thank you so much for that. Guardian Prepping came in with 70 Rand. He was on another program with me last night in the chat. I enjoyed that. Nick Muller came in with the 70 Rand, asking for us to talk and do this. And then Waldo Cohn came in and broke the bank with a 5,000 kroner, Swedish kroner, which is about $500 US super chat. Oh my goodness. I think that Ronaldo is going to have to get busy with his e-begging to improve on that. That's the biggest super chat I've ever seen. Thank you so much for that. And Leo Vinyansa van Rensburg came in with 140 Rand super chat. Thank you so much for that. Listen, folks, it's really gratifying and edifying to see that people really care about this content and want to have these conversations. And I think if it wasn't for the fact that Oliver North was already had the title War Stories with Colonel North, we might just go with a program called War Stories. But maybe Fireside with the Colonels is good, and we'll call it with the subtitle War Stories, and we'll talk about war stories, because as Wyatt just said there, it's these experiences, while they may be forged in combat or in uniform, they are in many respects universal to the human experience and relate back to civilians. And I think a lot of people like to hear about it just for that reason. So I think that maybe we'll take a look at that. But again, so my thank you to you, and my limited Afrikaans ability to speak, but I can read. Bye donkey, Minya. It was a pleasure to have you on again. And I wish you a pleasant week and a happy new year. And we'll chat shortly. If you want to hang around, if you can, in the Zoom session while I wrap up, it'll take me a minute or two. Then we'll have a quick conversation about this proposal. Is that okay?
Okay.
All right.
Okay, I'll hang around, yeah.
All right, folks. Colonel Wynand du Toit, there you go. And I'm going to put him in the waiting room, and then I'm going to wrap up. Okay, there you go. All right, folks. Wow. Oh, my goodness. What can I say about that other than thank you so much to my guest. Wow. And thank you to the audience. You guys are fantastic. You really are. Every time I consider, well, maybe I should just stop doing this and move on, you all just come through and push with the support and just the hey, if the word gobsmacked means anything to you, I'm gobsmacked, and not just because of the massive super chat that came in tonight, but also for the conversation and people, their polite responses, their questions. And my apologies for not getting to more of your comments in chat. It isn't always that easy to do when you have such a good flowing conversation, and we have a good flowing conversation as well as challenges with the IT, which we had a little bit of a breakup there. I've got to focus on that. So I do my best to bring your chat in, and I do appreciate it. It is not missed. When I'm on the camera by myself, you'll notice that I do bring all the chat in as much as I can as part of the program. That's, I guess, suppose if any content creator has a unique perspective or method, that's one of mine, is I like to bring people into it. Anyway, once again, folks, thanks a lot. I'll be back with Night Owls because I want to talk about this conversation later on. So if you want to tune in an hour and 35 minutes from now at 9, or excuse me, wait a second, 1 and 7, 8:30. No, 2:30, 9:35. Yeah, 9:35 South Africa, Botswana, Namibia time. Senior moment there. 9:35 there and 2:35 Eastern Standard Time here on Monday, the 10th of January, 2022, the first genuine working Monday of the year. Please tune in and join us for Night Owls. If you're not a subscriber, 185 people currently still here. I'm sure some of you aren't subscribers. Why not give it a shot there, folks? Smash that like button and smash the subscription button. It costs you nothing but a moment of your time, and we appreciate it. Thanks a lot. And with that, folks, I'm going to wrap it up here, and then I'm going to go off myself and join the Colonel, and we'll have a quick conversation about where we're going to go forward on this. Thank you all so much. Cheers, everybody, and I'll catch you in about an hour and 30 minutes. Cheers. Mazambani says, Chris, I'm glad to see you finally managed to get Wynand on your show. I remember asking you to get him back when I was still stuck in Mauritius. Boy, you've changed your name. I know who this is now. I've had him on the program 2-3 times in the past. In fact, late November, he was on the program, and I just thought it was time to bring him back on. So, and this program went in a direction, actually, I wasn't expecting it to go, and I enjoyed even more than I intended or expected to. But thank you very much. You just got to watch my program religiously, folks. Then you'll see people on here. Cheers, everybody. Take care of yourselves. See you in a bit.